Well, welcome everyone to the second episode of Holy Grounds. You'll notice a little bit of scenery change this time. We are actually at Buffalo Church of the Nazarene. This is actually being filmed on a Wednesday because myself and Candace have to actually be out of town this weekend, so we can't be at Coffee with a Twist. So last week we finished up with chapter number 1 of the book of Ruth, and now we're on to, logically, chapter 2. And I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. My notes take up about that much of a page, and Patrick's over here takes up...
I have 2 pages.
2 pages. My wife has way more pages than me, so they'll probably be doing more of the talking, but I guarantee I have some commentary as it goes. So let's talk about the book of Ruth, chapter 2. I know we've got some of our same translations as last time. We've got New King James, New English. We've got NIV, King James, and we've got New American Standard. Oh, is that your New American Standard? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, they kind of look the same. Right? Yeah. So, 2 New American Standards, New King James, New English, right here, and a King James. And it's kind of ironic, but I've got the King James shirt on today.
So let's recap.
Okay.
Ruth is from Moab, the Wash Bowl
of
the Old Testament.
Yep.
And so she goes home with her mother-in-law, Naomi. And basically we end with her saying, here we are, we're back where we started. What's the next steps? And that's kind of where we go in chapter 2. And chapter 2 opens up really interestingly because it talks about, now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Why do we not remember him, number 1? But number 2, he's been here the entire time, and he's a wealthy individual. Like, we get that in verse 1. But at this point, they don't know Boaz is here. This is just kind of like a, hey, we're foreshadowing the whole chapter for you in one verse. Like, this is the verse. That's like, the chapter is now set up. And in verse 2, then we kind of get into another situation because now we've said, here's Boaz, this really wealthy individual that's a kinsman of this family, and we get Ruth the Moabitess. So we have to remind the readers that Ruth is from Moab, the Wash Bowl, because she is now going to set up the next part of the story and why her and Boaz are interconnected in a way that we don't know yet. But remembering, we don't know what the point of that knowledge is until we continue reading. And it starts by saying, Ruth talks to Naomi, let me go glean. So glean, just for those who need a vocab, it's gathering leftover grain after a harvest. And this is actually law.
I'm not gonna lie, I had to look it up.
Me too.
I was like, I don't know what gleaning is. Why are we doing this?
Exactly. Now, gleaning is actually law. So Ruth is now quoting law. Because if you flip to Deuteronomy chapter 24, 18 and 19. So it says, but you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt and that the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I am commanding you to do this thing. When you reap your harvest in your field and have forgotten a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the alien or foreigner, for the orphan and for the widow, in order that your Lord, your God, may bless you in all the work of your hands. So now we're quoting law. So Naomi's a widow, Ruth is a widow, and Ruth is also an alien at this point, or a foreigner. She's not from this land. She followed Naomi back to her homeland, and remember, we ended by saying, your God is my God, your people is my people, whatever you do, I will do with you. Where you die, I will die. And we come back, and where chapter 1 ends is that it's the beginning of barley harvest. So this is a good time for those individuals to go gleaning. So essentially, I read about this and listened to some commentary, but the reapers would go first, and they would just go through the field and just start chopping, taking what they needed. And if they left something, they weren't allowed to go back and get it. As soon as they made their sweep, it was done. But they had to leave the corners open. And so that's where these individuals would start. They would go through and take what was from the corners, and then what was left in the middle, they would go and take next. And so Ruth being a foreigner to this land, she understood this. And she's now taking the weight of Naomi as well and being like, I'm going to go glean. And essentially I'm gleaning for both of us. And so I think that's very important. But also going back to that verse in Deuteronomy, it says, I have redeemed you. And so notice, God is now taking care of these people. This is a good example of God being like, I take care of the poor, I take care of the broken, I take care of the foreigner, I take care of everyone, even those that don't have. And this leads to verse 3, and it just makes me laugh because I read this, and it reads, and she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz. So she had no idea. Verse 1 introduces, we have this kinsman, and somehow she ends up in his field. And have you ever read one of those books where like you open it and it tells you like you have two options, and it's like
You
can
Choose Your
go,
Own Journey?
yeah, you can like go
I
to
love
page
those
3.
books.
Okay, so that's kind of how I'm feeling like this leads to a conversation about free will and God's will. And it's kind of confusing because Ruth had no idea. She could have been walking down and been like, that's a nasty field. And that could have been Boaz's field. And she could have been like, I'm going to go over here to Frank's field. So it's just kind of crazy because God's will really goes with our free will as well here. So he knew what was going to happen and what had to happen. But Naomi, Ruth decided that was the field she was going to that day. And it just so happened to be a relative.
It also like just shows you that when you come into the family of God, you're not just somebody who just shows up and is not automatically expected to do. You know, when you get saved, you join a church. You know, it's not like the pastor, the Sunday school person in charge of Sunday school, or the nursery workers or whatever are immediately coming up and demanding you that you have to do this, and this. Okay, you're a part of this church now. You have to. It's like, no. Notice that, like, it doesn't say she was told to. I mean, kind of like Ruth said to the Moabitess, said to Naomi, please, or this is actually Ruth saying, like, this is a foreigner, as the people who are just now joining these churches, you should want to ask, what can I do to help? Now, Ruth comes in as a foreigner, and she's not expecting them to give her everything that she wants. She's not expecting them to just pay for everything. She's a foreigner. She has to pull her own weight. And she knows that, and she's going to do it right off the bat. When we get saved and we join a church, we need to start pulling our own weight. Not in a bad way, like we owe something, but, you know, Paul says faith without works is dead. And, you know, Ruth told Naomi, your God will be my God. So she has faith in this God already. And now she's like, well, I've got to do something. Like, I have to help these people. They've taken me in. I can't just mooch off them. And so when we show up to a church, we shouldn't want to mooch off a church and just reap all the benefits. We have to put in the work. You know, Patrick, you and I grew up in this church. Like, how often were we, like, among the first people to show up and the last to leave?
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know what it's like to leave a church first.
So Ruth came in and she was like, I am ready. I will go do it. And here's the thing. They weren't established yet. They just came back. And now it's just Ruth and Naomi. And as we learned in chapter 1, Naomi's old. So Ruth is now taking on that weight of, this is also my parent. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take care of my parent as well.
And we talked about that in Sunday school, in the crucifixion, where John, I think it's only John's gospel, I could be wrong, that records Jesus looking down at Mary and the beloved disciple, you know, and said, you know, woman, this is your son, or woman, behold your son, son, behold your mother. You know, John, the disciple, you know, we know Joseph, Jesus' earthly father, is most likely dead at this point in his life, because he's never mentioned again after when he's 12, after the temple scene. Like, Joseph's gone, so he's probably dead at this point. So, you know, Jesus is dying, and Mary would have had nobody. And as a widow, she would have been bottom barrel Israelite. So John taking on Mary as his mother means that she has security. She has money. She has protection. She has an ability to go to synagogue. She has ability to make money herself because she has someone backing her. She has a man backing her. And this was just the culture of the time. It's not something we believe today. If a woman's husband passes away, we don't look at that woman as any less. But same thing now. I mean, granted, like Ruth is also a woman, but Ruth is also taking on this as like she needs to take care of this person because this person took care of her.
Exactly. Now, moving into this part, Boaz now introduces himself. He doesn't come out and be like, "Hello, world, I am Boaz." But he does come out to his people, and he says, "May the Lord be with you." And they respond, "May the Lord bless you." And that's just such an amazing welcome. Like, it's not like, "Hey guys, thanks for working." It's not like "Keep working out there." You know, like, this is like, he's got the Lord on his side. Mm-hmm. And he knows where everything comes from. And it just shows it right here. And that's very important as well as we continue moving through this. Because again, Ruth, she's just kind of accepted, I'm taking on whatever Naomi says. Her thing, my thing. And so now we have another godly figure in her life. And we move down, and he talks to his servant who was in charge of the reapers. So he's got all these people out in the field. They're cutting down, this is verse 5, everything that they need to for harvest. And he goes to his servant who's in charge of all of them. And he sees out in the field a young woman. And he's like, "Who is this woman?" And the servant in charge responds, "She is the young Moabite woman." Again, we have to remind everybody of that.
You can't forget.
We can't forget that she's the Moabite, who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. Yeah, they made sure. They say that a lot in here. They're like, the Moabite. This chapter is like Ruth the Moabite.
That's the name of this episode, the Moabite.
And if you're keeping track, Moabite is the word of the day.
But you know, the crazy thing is, he had no idea who this was, but the servant in charge did. And isn't that crazy to think about? That's kind of how the relationship between us and God and Jesus works. Jesus is this is who this is. This is who's in the field. So God knows us. I'm not saying that. This is not like God doesn't know us and Jesus has telling. But Jesus is the one that explains everything for us. This is my child. This is the man. This is the woman. He is the one that goes to God and he says, "This is my child who I died for." And I know it's not mentioned, I know it's not said here, but it's like that foreshadowing of what's going to happen. We're seeing this all work out with Boaz. And we're going to see a lot of those connections go with Boaz and Ruth. Because Boaz realizes who this is now. We know this is Ruth, the Moabite. And so he goes to her and he tells her, verse 8, "Do not go to glean in another field. Abide by my maids." And so he's essentially saying, my field is your field now. Mm. You are welcome here. You can take whatever you want. And that leads to verse 10. And this is us. This is us in the situation. "Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, 'Why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?'" That's powerful. Yeah. That if there had to be a verse in here that was powerful, that's it. Because this is exactly how Jesus is with us. Exactly. And actually,
it's like how people outside of West Virginia look at us.
Yeah, and you know, it's just human. Yeah. And I hate to say that, but there are some things that are just human.
But this, like, you got to think at this point in Israel's history, Moses is long gone. They've been in the Promised Land for quite some time at this point. They're told to be a different people. Like, the Israelites physically and characteristically were different than the rest of the world. It's pretty easy probably to spot them too. So she probably stuck out like a sore thumb. How she dressed, how she acted, how she spoke. That she had an accent. She probably the languages of this region were probably very similar in dialect. It's like if you travel from deep Appalachia up to New York, you can understand them, but you're going to be like, okay.
Huh?
And it's like you speak to someone from the Midwest, same thing. But even just in the United States alone, how someone from Appalachia dresses, talks, and acts is different from someone from New York City, from Los Angeles, Texas. Okay? It's true. No, I ain't cutting that. That's staying in. But it's true. So, like, she stuck out like a sore thumb. That's probably people are just like, Boaz comes around and he's just like, the Lord be with you. May the Lord bless you. And then he probably like,
and there's a woman that doesn't look like everybody else.
just like, but he wasn't upset about it. He's just like, you're different.
Who are you?
Who are you?
And
Who are you? Who are you?
I mean, granted, he could have asked that about other people, but notice, he didn't ask about anybody else. You can't tell me that there weren't other people that were probably also gleaning that field.
Well, yeah.
But there was something about her that he realized. He knew it. Because he's also saying, don't go glean in other fields. It was a common practice for people to go glean. I mean, people that don't have food, people that don't have money. This is what they did. This is how they fed themselves.
Go.
And so just thinking about it, probably wasn't the same for everybody. So these people were probably trying to go to these fields, and they probably were being taken away from some. And again, we know that these people don't always listen to God's law.
Well, yeah, this is the time of the judges.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that even though it was law, and we can see that it was law, it probably wasn't followed by everybody. So Boaz could have also came out here and been like, you're from Moab.
Go away.
No. And realize, we've already talked about Moab. We know what, last week we talked about where the Moabites came from. How they were conceived. How it's impacted everything that they do, how they're viewed by the world. And I mean, granted, it's later on as well that we see worshipful. We see all these other negative descriptors. But in Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verse 3 through 6, and I'm not...
An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord forever. Because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when they came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam the son of Beor from Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse you. Nevertheless, the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. You shall not seek their peace nor their prosperity all your days forever.
So as we learn right there, the Moabites were cursed to the 10th generation. So that means that if they were to break this command right here, then we're talking great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Probably more than that. I didn't count.
I mean, look up how many years is 10 generations. Look that up.
Long time.
Long time.
It's a very long time.
How would you know? It depends on how old the people are.
Well, just type in how long is 10 generations.
It depends on when you have kids. I mean, I'll look it up, but
Please do.
Yeah.
250 to 300 years.
So that's how long they were cursed.
From that point.
Yes. And so then after that, then the 11th generation, well, he could restart. But 10 generations they were cursed. And they knew that. They knew that the Moabites were cursed. They knew they were dirty people. They knew that God did not look on them favorably for the way that they acted and the way that they were. And so Boaz is like, you're a Moabite. You're in my field. And he knew that, again, Moabites were unclean. And he decided to keep her there. And I think that's another important thing to see here. Because it says, because they didn't do these things, because they try to bring curses upon you. And it tells you to never seek their peace or their prosperity. Yet he found favor in Ruth. And as you said last week, Ruth is going to turn in to essentially one of the woman heads of Jesus' lineage. So God picks people. He knows who he's picking to do what his will is. And that's what we get here. We get somebody from an unclean land that's going to continue out the will of God. Because without her, granted, I do believe that Jesus would have came. I'm not going to say that without Ruth there would be no Jesus, because that's definitely not accurate. It probably would have worked out some way. But he chose somebody who you would not expect. And I think that's another thing that's very important to us. We don't have to be the perfect person. We don't have to be the, yes, I've done everything right in my life. You're going to be picked based on God's will. And he's already got it planned out for you. Granted, we did probably get a little nervous when she was choosing around in fields. But it always ends up the way that it's supposed to be. And it's hard to imagine, because there are things in life that we will never fathom being God's will. But everything has a purpose. And as long as you continue to trust in him, and granted, she just met this guy. She's like, your Lord, mine. She probably didn't know what Lord meant. So,
your Lord, mine.
mine, whatever that means. So,
whatever the Hebrew term for it is.
So, I mean, God is blessing after blessing right away, because it's all starting to come together. Now, Boaz does also got a keen eye for her, which we get to talk about in chapter 3, about him and Ruth and them getting ready to get married. That's chapter 4. But we're going to get there. Spoilers.
Nice.
They get married.
Spoilers! I read that for you.
Spoiler alert.
I genuinely hope most people watching this has read or knows the story of Ruth, but it's okay if you haven't.
Spoiler alert, Jesus comes back.
Didn't you say last week that you were like, I'm not read up on Ruth that well?
A book that, I'm going to be honest, I'm not too familiar with when it comes to knowing core details of. I could probably give you like the most basic rendition of it. I really wasn't. I like. Did we ever quiz on Ruth? Yeah, we quizzed on Ruth.
You would have had to have. It would have been Judges something Ruth and.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So we did.
It was mixed
Lord
with.
have mercy.
Well,
yeah, when you mix Ruth and the Judges, I mean, it makes sense that you mix Ruth and the Judges together because
you
they
were
take
probably
place.
more focused on Judges.
Yes.
Than you were Ruth.
Have you read Judges?
No, I haven't got that far yet.
Well, we're already past it.
It's before this.
Okay, like everybody reads it chronologically.
The next thing that I see is verse 14. And just to sum that up, he says, come and dine. But the way that he has this dinner for her, listen to the connection. Come here that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers. So just think about that. We have bread and we have vinegar. What is that tying into? What element do you see of Jesus to come?
This is the Last Supper.
Yeah. And it's also what we think of when we think of communion. So it's basically like, I'm offering you my bread. I'm offering you my vinegar. And that's going to happen, well, a couple chapters down, or a couple books down the line. And that flips over to verse 15. So Boaz is now talking to his servants. And we see kind of how he feels about Ruth. He tells his servants, let her glean even among the sheaves and do not insult her. Also, love the word also, you shall purposely pull out for her some grain from the bundles and leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. So now he's basically like, She doesn't have to do the sides anymore. She can glean wherever she wants. And you can't stop her. Don't say anything to her. And he's telling them, and remember, she's already went out. He's telling his servants, when you are picking up your stuff, drop her a little. Drop some on the ground right in front of her. Because remember, they can't pick up what's been left. So the only person that can take it is her. So Boaz already tells us how he feels about Ruth right there. But it leads to another question. So thinking about this comparison with Jesus and God giving us everything that we need. Is grace fair?
Yeah.
Well, now think about if you were the person here that had to go pick that stuff. You did?
It depends on what side of grace you're on.
Well, I mean, when we're on this side of grace, obviously it's fair because, God protects the wicked. Like, there are people we see every day that don't know Christ, and probably not saying they're blessed more than me. I'm blessed beyond belief, but they may have higher paying job, fancier cars, no student debt. I mean, I don't have. I live in an apartment. I drive a car, gets me from point A to point B. We got two cars. Sometimes, yeah. But we've got cars that get us from point A to point B. We've been blessed to be able to afford the cars we have. You remember that Cavalier you drove for eternity?
Hey, don't you talk about my Cavalier. It was a good car.
Yeah, and you ooh.
No, I wrecked it.
Okay.
Actually,
No, keep that in.
I did not wreck it. A drunk driver pulled out in front of me and I hit him.
Oh, okay.
Period.
But it was still his fault. Thanks, cop.
But in reality, like, it seems when you're not on this side of grace, it's not fair. But people who don't know Jesus think that way. I could have my job taken away from me, and Jim Bob Billy Joe over here, who doesn't know Jesus, right, could have the dream job he's always wanted just given to him the same day. And he could be, and vice versa, and to him, it's either fair or not fair. But to me, it's just like, okay, this is what was meant to happen to me, and I'm still to praise God in this situation. And Boaz is telling his servants, be like, okay, you have to do this. You need to do this. But she's also somebody who's, if you're that young Christian in the church, like experienced Christians, we're called to help the young Christian. We're called to give them more than what they need. Not what they need, but give them more. And in term of giving them more, we are to sacrifice what we already have. And his workers are to sacrifice what they've already picked so she can get some too. We're not called to like just leave the young Christian in the path and be like, catch up, boy.
I mean, just think about it. We are essentially like a test tube. And I truly believe that God knows where we top off. And granted, we understand that it'll be overflowing. But there are going to be times where people go through different things that they might need just a little bit more poured in. And it's not saying that this person's getting more than me, but sometimes
They need that extra
you
help.
need that extra.
The extra push.
Again, she just agreed that this God was her God. And this is her, I would probably say, first true encounter with this, because I imagine when they were in Moab, they weren't probably like, the Lord of Bethlehem. They probably were not saying that too much, because by the same token, we knew how they felt about Moabites. But think about how Moabites felt about them. Because now they understand that they're cursed. Their lineage, everything.
Yeah, I'm sure that their societal oral tradition about the Israelites is probably not.
Yeah,
in
it's
favor.
probably negative.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, granted, imagine you were born a Moabite. And you were like, and God hates us. And I'm not saying it that way, but that's probably how they would have felt.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we see a lot of this negative writing about Moab. And granted, There are good things that come out of Moab. There are good things that come out of every bad place. But they're going to have negative feelings too. And so Boaz, I believe in that instance, understood that it was time that he showed her what she needed to be shown to get closer to God.
So before you move on, I have a question that may not get answered, but it's just something I've been thinking of. So if you're harvesting the stuff and you have it all like in your hands or in a bag or however they keep hold of it, what if you just accidentally drop it all? Is it no longer yours?
That's my understanding. I mean, I would have to read up on Old Testament law, but that's what all this is.
Like, say you have like a whole like handful of the stuff, and you're walking and you trip over a rock, and it all falls out of your hands. Are you just out of luck, or?
I think it's not that it's not yours anymore. It's become unclean.
Because that could be true too.
But it's coming from the ground.
Well, yes, but coming from the ground and touching the ground, according to the law, would be considered two different things. Because we come from the ground, you know.
Yeah.
We come from dust. We can purify ourselves.
And I imagine these people are probably also being fed from what they get. So what they get.
And again, this is also at a time when, you know, Israel's not really obeying God. Are they really letting every single piece of grain go to waste on the ground?
Well,
Probably,
that's true too.
probably
But
not.
granted, we don't have a famine anymore.
Right.
Now we're back with Naomi. So it literally feels like this is one day. She goes, she gleans, she's eating at the table, she meets Boaz, takes all of her stuff. Now she's heading home, and her mother-in-law asks her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work?" And I think that's something important for us too. That's something as Christians we should be able to ask each other. Where did you glean today? Where did you pick up all the stuff? Where did you go visit today? Where did you encounter God today? Mm-hmm. And Naomi realizes that she has a lot of food. Like, she recognizes it. Like, you can look at her and be like, that's more than a normal person would bring home if they were to glean. And Ruth just responds nonchalantly, I worked for Boaz today.
See, I imagine her saying that and then Naomi doing like the surprise Pikachu meme.
Yeah,
or the surprise Patrick meme, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like, I mean, and that's kind of what I thought
Insert
about.
both of those right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
But, I mean, seriously, think about it. Like, Naomi has no idea who this... Ruth has no idea who this is. She's just like, this really nice guy Boaz gave me food, and these random workers kept dropping food in front of me, and I just kept picking it up. And Naomi's like, you did what?
What?
She's like, did you say Boaz?
Did you see? Actually, that's the episode title right there. Did you say Boaz?
But she's essentially like her brain. I mean, I imagine the surprise face too. That's actually what I thought about. Like,
It
she's
could
literally
be the
sitting
same
there.
Boaz I know.
Exactly. Well, I mean, how many people do you think were named Boaz in this town?
I feel like you would be surprised. I feel like a lot.
I want to counter, but of course we're never going to know. That'll be one of my questions when I get to heaven. Hopefully we get an unlimited amount because I have a lot. But, I mean, she's so excited. And Naomi says to her, may he be blessed of the Lord who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead. So that's the connection that we have here, that Boaz is related to her, but he is showing kindness to her in Elimelech's death. Because, granted, they're probably cousins, Boaz and Elimelech. They're probably not brothers, or I don't imagine it's like father, son. I believe like cousins. And she says, she knows that man is a relative. He is one of our closest relatives. Not close enough for you to remember at the beginning of the chapter, but she recognizes that her relative, who she probably forgot about because, again, Naomi, chapter 1, woe is me, everyone's dead, I'm sad, call me Mara, I'm bitter, to being like, the Lord does still work. Everything that happened in here leads to what comes next.
Period.
Period. That was a little longer this time. I like it. Want to thank you guys for joining in for episode number 2 of Holy Grounds. Hopefully next time we'll be back in the coffee shop to allow this to make a little bit more sense, but I did make them some coffee. I wasn't feeling coffee today. If Pastor Bill's watching this, he knows I got to have my Coke Zero because it's superior than Pepsi Zeros or whatever. Thank you guys for joining. Glad you guys are enjoying doing this. I'm having a great time doing this for all you listening and watching. Hope you enjoyed it too. We'll see you guys next week.